And agriculturals, two good longs on agriculturals, long potentials at this point because we haven't triggered yet on corn. We've been watching this for a few days and it could trigger tomorrow. And the other one is soybeans, which is already in the middle of a 1-hour trade. Here we go, we have triggered Friday. So nice bullish advance on soybeans. And if you're in this, or if you're considering joining now, I think because of this little retracement, I think it's still not too late to join this bullish advance. We have a previous high around 1550, something on the weekly chart. Let's see the agriculturals. Corn is moving as we speak. The bull flag, the complex bull flag on the daily is valid, intact, and is just about to get triggered here, probably this trigger area. These two little candles with these stops, if those break, probably we can say that this market wants to move to the upside. If you don't want to trade the daily because it's too big, then you can just wait for the first pullback on the 4-hour chart. Let's look at soybeans. Well, very similar situation. Whether it's inflationary pressure or whatever it is on these agricultural markets, I don't claim to know. I don't think it really matters. But I think it's quite likely that these markets will test these highs on soybeans like 1500 area. So this is a very good opportunity. I think this trade looks pretty good if we do get triggered, of course. Last but not least, there's nothing really tradable yet on wheat, but we need to note that wheat has also moved today, pretty big move actually. And what we're looking for here, if you're a 4-hour trader, the first pullback on the 4-hour chart. This is probably a weekly structure, a very big, complex bull flag on the weekly. Well, what we can do with it is look for opportunities once it gets going and look for entry areas on our relevant timeframes to join this move. Last but not least, agriculturals. Some good developments in agriculturals. The daily finally has triggered on corn. It didn't go too far today, but that's okay. There's still a good 1-hour potential here. The 4-hour chart is really strong. We didn't really get the bull flag on the 4-hour, which is a sign of strength. And let's look at soybeans, the other market where we had a bull flag here on the daily, waited a couple of days. Beautiful. This is a classic good-looking bull flag. It triggered or just about to get triggered, depending on how you define it. And we have good expectation that this will hit 1-hour. Look at the weekly chart. This is not bearish at all. And if we start moving, then we have a well-defined target area. And wheat was not a tradable structure in our book, but we did mention this retest of this low. And we also mentioned last night, I think maybe it was 2 days ago, that the weekly is in control. So the weekly bull flag is what we started watching. And now we didn't really get the pullback here on the 4-hour chart, which is more tradable, would have been more tradable for us. It just kept going. There's nothing we can do. I don't like chasing price, so that's not something I'm interested in doing. I think the time will come when we'll have a suitable opportunity to join this move. The wheat market is also, look at the weekly chart, has lots of room to go to the upside. And last but not least, we had an excellent trade documented in the video as well, 1-hour on soybeans. This is what we like doing. This is what we're after. And we have another good setup coming. So soybeans is in the past. Wheat is coming up now. Bull flag on the 4-hour chart, good complex bull flag on the daily, and a supportive structure, a bull flag on the weekly. Nothing is guaranteed, but it looks good at this time. And we are looking for a trigger on the 4-hour time frame. Now, continuing with agriculturals, all three that we're watching, corn, soybeans, and wheat, are pushing to the upside. Look at this, corn first, hitting or almost hitting 1-hour, or soon to be hitting 1-hour on the daily chart. And we talked about this profit-taking area, remember, this is an important concept. If the first 1R includes a previous pivot here, then I think it might make sense to remove, let's say, 1/3 or even half at the previous pivot, because sometimes if it can fail, it might fail in this area. If this area is conquered, then of course the 1R is the next stop. And let's look at soybeans. Here we go. This hasn't run away yet. So here we go. The trigger, first pullback above resistance, previous resistance, now becoming potentially support. And we have a 1R trade from last week on the daily chart, but now we are getting ready for the next one. And this little consolidation may be all we get. Last but not least, wheat is pushing to the upside. We are out of this complex bull flag on the daily, and the 60-minute looks good too. We're coming out from a complex consolidation here, and the 4-hour chart, which is our focus actually, has a clearly defined trigger area here, which if it gets violated, it's a good area to go long from. So that's what it is for tonight. Some excellent setups. We have to be paying attention here. And then last but not least, a couple of good ones on agriculturals. Let's have a look. So these are difficult trades, admittedly, but we have to make note that corn is moving nicely towards a 1R on the daily. And please note, it doesn't matter if you're in this trade or if you're not in this trade. The most benefit from this is the learning experience. So we have thousands of trades now, which move as expected, which should give you confidence and help you build up confidence in your own method, in your own customized method, on your own time frame. But these trades, and it's just the nature of the game. Since this is a daily chart, it takes almost a week, you see, in this case, to reach 1R. But that's fine. That's the daily time frame. That's all. Soybeans, on which we haven't moved yet on the daily out of this bull flag here, but we expect to. And the 4-hour chart is nicely cooperating at this point. And let's see wheat, which also made a move to the upside, triggered, the long triggered, and we're moving out of this complex bull flag, this giant bull flag, which is actually a bull flag on the weekly chart. Last but not least, pretty good work on agriculturals. Let's look at corn first, on which we hit 1R on the daily time frame. It took several days, as you recall, but just an example, patience pays, and this is now a 1R trade on the daily. Beautiful. Another 1R is the wheat has been completed. Retracement and a little bit overblown, but nonetheless, this is why taking 1R is usually a good idea. Look at this, 1R was hit, but since then, the trade hasn't done much. But by that time, by this time, we'd be out of this trade with a beautiful profit. So 1R hit on wheat, and let's look at soybeans, which is still ahead of us. This is a bull flag at this time, which we do want to pursue. Doesn't look too convincing yet, and if it doesn't trigger, that's completely fine with us. But if it triggers, then we want to go along with this. And last but not least, soybean reached 1R on the daily as we sent out a little heads up during the day. So hopefully some of you rode this wave as well. And there are more waves coming our way. So pay attention, have a plan, and let's see what happens tomorrow. And then we have agriculturals, beautiful moves in agriculturals. Look at this. We identify this complex bull flag on the daily. Look at this, what happened, more than 1R. A lot of little bull flags that I deleted them, or I erased them, but they were on the chart here last week. And we all knew about it. So hopefully you were in some of these. And we also identify the previous target area of the weekly chart. The next one is soybeans. Let's look at that too. That's another dramatic move, more than 1R even on the daily. Look at this. And we had a couple of good opportunities to join here and here. And initially, I think this was the first one that was on our chart. Okay, and What else? And so this is the past. We knew we were on top of this, but still, these trades are gone now. And we always want to look into the future to see what's up. And we cannot miss all the trades, so we need to focus on what's coming up. And what's coming up is wheat. Because wheat, and don't be surprised if wheat makes a giant move just like the other two. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And depending on your risk management rules and trading plan, you may want to be on top of this and participate, because this is a structure actually on the weekly. We also talked about this complex bull flag on the weekly. So we need to make money here. If this triggers, then there might be a 1-hour trade here on the daily chart. Of course, micro contracts are available. Let me just show you some of the micros. And there are micro, mini-sized soybean and corn too, mini corn. Also, there are ETFs, if you're thinking ETFs. Continuing, I'm just going down the list here, my list. Let's see what else we got here. We have a couple of good agriculturals. Here is corn, having triggered on the 4-hour chart. And soybeans has really run away. Look at this. So that's now a 3 or 4-hour trade if you've been trailing this. And we were also, let me just show it to you, this horizontal consolidation a few days ago. I was not long here because I was busy elsewhere, but if you were long here, this is a classic pattern. There was no reason not to take it if you had the resources at the time it happened, so it's pretty good. And let's see, now wheat, one word about wheat. Of course, it fell back, but I have this feeling that this is just going to be a complex bull flag, you see? And this is typical market behavior. When everybody gives up, when everybody gets sleepy, when everybody stops paying attention, that's when the market tends to go the way it was going to go anyway. So pay attention to this, and what's the best? Probably around here, the break of this candle would be a good area to consider for a trigger. And since we are still long, if we get long, you're going to get some long signals here, but you don't really have to wait for the long signal algorithmically, because we can read market structure before the signal happens. So if this breaks here, I think we can start to target the previous high. However, if there's no trigger, there's no trade. So as always, if it goes this way by the morning, who cares, right? So we're not in the trade, we never got triggered, and we just continue to do our job. Okay, let's see what else is here. Agriculturals, we had a corn which failed or has failed for now, and we have been stopped out. This happens too, no worries. And what I'd like to note here, that based on the daily chart, a re-trigger is possible. So on the daily, this is still a valid bull flag. And if it moves to the upside, we will not be shy to enter again, perhaps in the same area, or perhaps on the break of this candle here. So this happens too. We have been stopped out from a trade, crazy market. We took the loser. We're not staying in. We were disciplined. But if we do get triggered again, that's a new trade, and we will be long again. So that doesn't contradict any of our principles or trading rules. Here we go. Soybeans is ripping. On the daily, it's very difficult to get engaged at this time because it's overextended and parabolic. And look at the weekly chart. This is also something we forecasted well ahead of time. This level here expected to get tested on the weekly. So there's a little bit of pushing there still left, but if you are long here, then you should definitely tighten stops and make sure that you get paid, because on the retest, there's room to go here. We don't have the pass, but there's more room to go, but probably there will be profit taking at this level. And wheat hasn't done much, but just let's have a quick look. Here we go. The expected long on wheat, the weekly, hasn't triggered, which is okay. I don't really know the reason, but we don't have to know the reason. If it gets triggered or if it goes back up, we're interested. If not, that's fine too. Right now in the 4-hour, it's much more bearish than bullish, but I'm not going to pursue the bearish setups here on agriculturals because I think because of many factors, I don't want to short wheat and corn and soybeans. I'm looking mainly to the upside for opportunities. And then last but not least, let's check out what's happening on agriculturals. This is still a good long here based off the daily corn. This we had for a few days. Identified the potential good long entry or setup on the daily chart, daily time frame, and it is starting to take shape here. On the 4-hour, it's a pretty messy structure, if it's a structure at all, but we're not trading the 4-hour chart here. We're focusing on the daily. And let's not just forget that we have a previous high, which is likely to be tested around 660. So we have about 40 points to go on the daily time frame. Pretty good opportunity on corn. Soybeans, breakout trade, quite extended on the daily chart, but 1, 2, 3 days of consolidation outside the Keltner without any signs of pulling back. That's a very bullish pressure here. Again, there's a magnet here, previous high, that would be 97. So we have a little bit of room to go here, about maybe 30 points, 40 points on the smaller charts, which is big enough for us to be interested in this long trade if it breaks out on the 4-hour chart. Last but not least, wheat. Not much was happening on wheat, pretty sideways market, but we do note the fact that the weekly is a bullish complex consolidation, in other words, a bull flag. If that gets triggered on the weekly, I think the smaller charts, the 4-hour and the daily, very quickly will advance to the upper ranges of this, the upper half of this range that we have on the daily chart. Agriculturals, corn is triggering on the 4-hour chart, complex bull flag, a little bit ugly, but ugliness doesn't matter here, especially since the daily is also set up nicely. Also, if you define your trade on the daily chart, then probably you're just about to get triggered right here, or maybe you could wait even a bit more. As you see, we had Friday's high, actually today, sorry, Monday's high, and you can designate the break of Monday's high as your trigger into a potential long on Tuesday, and the previous high is nicely defined here on the weekly chart. So looks good on corn. And let's look at soybeans and wheat just to see what's happening there. Well, soybeans is crazily extended and hyperbolic on the daily, so I wouldn't really touch that. Also, practically speaking, it has retested the weekly previous high. And wheat, however, is just about to get going here. We have to shake off the bearish potential first, so this is a bearish setup. But judging from the others and judging from the weekly, this bearish setup I expect to fail. And if it does, and if it gets going, then you can start looking at long trades on wheat as well. So that's what we're dealing with now going into Tuesday. Not too bad at all. And we'll be back in the morning. Moving on to agriculturals, we have a pretty good long setup here on corn, which we expect to test the previous high around 660. So that's a pretty good 30-point move. This is what we're aiming, and 635 looks like a pretty good entry area for us here, and you can keep a runner to 660. And let's not forget the success story of today, corn, on which we comfortably, well, trading is never easy, but relatively speaking, comfortably reached the 1-hour area, and we took profits on the 4-hour chart. There's a little more to go on the daily, so if you're keeping a runner to 660-ish area, that's a good idea, I think. And judging from soybeans, which is also has tested, look at this, the weekly double top and didn't even look back to stop, perhaps corn, which is also testing 660, a major previous high, may not stop here either. So if you want to keep a runner, you don't really have to remove it at 660. You can just trail it from behind and see how far it goes. And the agriculturals, Another good example of the importance of removing profits at 1R. Look at what happened on the daily chart. We reached 1R, of course, by accident, but right on the tick here somewhere. And then we collapsed. Could be profit taking or whatever it is. But please note that the very obvious double top here on the weekly chart. So that could be a technical factor and potentially profit taking here, which caused this large top tail. When the day comes, you'll know a lot more about a certain instrument. Also, all these setups, they transfer often very well to other instruments. So there's a lot to learn here. And even if you just trade just one instrument, whatever it is, the Japanese yen, doesn't matter. You focus on one instrument, there's still a lot to learn from what we do here every night. Okay, so just to continue and finish it off, the agriculturals are moving like, I don't know what's the right word, look at this. Soya beans, we had some good longs here, and now it's a bit overextended. It's penetrated the previous high. The next one is corn. Here we go. Also, looks like the previous high will be exceeded. And if I put more, probably I should put it on the monthly chart, you would see that in 2011, was it, or 2012, we were, you see, here's the chart. We were around maybe 1,000. So there's a lot of room to go. Probably what we're doing here is a breakout from this area, the 650-ish area. So you can think long-term long trades on these agricultural products. Again, you can look up the appropriate ETF. This might take 2, 3, 4 months to head up here, but it could be a very good trade. And last but not least, certainly not least, wheat is the one that's been lagging. So corn and soybean they have run away a little bit already. Wheat hasn't yet. Look at this. This is a monthly chart. Look at this bull flag. I know it's a very big chart, but there's micro wheat as well, and there's ETFs. You can make a plan, but this might be heading back to where it came from, and it came from 1,400, and now we're at 850. Because of the inflationary pressure and probably many other factors, these prices seem to be heading much higher. Also, if you look at the daily chart, we haven't missed anything because Thursday, Friday, it is just breaking out right now. And this bull flag on the weekly or monthly time frame this is what it looks like on the daily. So even using this level as the trigger into a long-term trade is still a very good trade. Let's move on to agriculturals, which again, a market which proved that our method works. Look at this 1R, whichever way I look, there's good news everywhere. This is corn, 1R and more. Actually, that's more like 2R by now. And these are trades and setups that we talked about maybe 10, 15 times in the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm glad to see what the charts are showing. Look at this beautiful wheat. Unstoppable. And remember what we said about the weekly chart and what we said about ETFs and long-term wheat positions for 2022. So far, so good. And whether you trade these short-term or long-term or both, and futures and ETFs, there's lots of opportunities here. And of course, this is not the place to go long from, so we have to wait for some kind of setup now. Say just a few words about agriculturals on which, well, there's overbought conditions, to say the least. There's nothing we can do here with this on corn. And same thing on soybeans, completely overblown candle here. This is not anything we can do with this on the long side anyway. So, and wheat is, well, it is what it is. We were on top of it, and now we got stopped out, and there's nothing we can do in this condition. We have to wait for some kind of setup. And agriculturals, same story, large candles, crazy moves, exhaustion at the top, quite normal to not to have excellent setups every day, every trading day of the year. So we're just staying out now. We did what we did. These large tails keep us away from these markets for now.